everybody? Welcome to the Simply People podcast. I'm your host, Dax Vanderwall, and this is season 1, all about the magic of generosity. Joining me in this journey, of which we are almost halfway, believe it or not, episode 5. We're planning on 10 episodes, so almost halfway when we finish this one. I'm here with Todd Thacker. Todd is the founder of Simply People, and in this episode, we're going to talk about really how generosity might disrupt. Generosity disrupts the ordinary. And essentially to give, often to be generous with our time, with our resources, socially, finance, all that, it's essentially breaking free from our comfort, or it's forcing us out of our comfort zone. It seems like an interruption, seems like a disruption. And so we need to get used to that, or we need to overcome that. Todd, how does generosity, or how has it pushed you out of your comfort zone? Or are there any other people in your life you have stories of where this has been true?
I think, yes, it does happen. And disruption is weird. And there's a lot of different angles on disruption. Yeah. And it can be when you choose to do something and it causes disruption, or things happen to you, your circumstances change, and it's uncomfortable. And I think an interesting one, and I've talked a lot about Nigeria, was when my daughter, Lauren, Heather and I went the first year, and we were home 10 minutes, and my daughter, Lauren, who was 16 at the time, she said, "Dad, we're going next summer, no questions asked." So I didn't have a vote.
That. Yeah.
I was going to Nigeria a second time. And that was a really crazy experience in so many different ways. And one of the things that was super crazy about that, I thought Nigeria was about me going with my kids and accompanying them. And when I went with Lauren the second time, and the way everyone responded to me coming back, all of a sudden I felt like God was like, this was never really about your kids. It was about using your kids to get you where I wanted you. And that was a pretty profound thing. I talked about the power of answer to prayer. That was answer to someone's prayer. And I can look back and see all these different things about Africa. I had one recurring dream as a kid, and it was that my wife and I would fill up our station wagon. Do you know what a station wagon is, Dax?
No.
It's kind of like cash.
I'm learning so much
or money
throughout this podcast, though.
So we would fill up our station wagon with different foods, and we would go to villages. We would drive to villages in Africa, and we would help people and go to the next village. And it was a recurring dream. And then I remember when, you may not remember this, but at one point the Sacramento Kings were quite good, and my buddy and I, we got a third of a season tickets, and I went down to see this couple who were getting the tickets from.
You got a third of the season tickets?
Yes. One.
So it's a third of the season?
Yes, a third of the season.
I've never heard that before.
Well, this family had season tickets. The guy took a third, his son took a third, and they were selling a third.
Okay, that works.
And it was a pre eBay, so we got, or the way that seats are today, we got a good deal on the tickets. And I said to the guy, I said, why are you selling a third of the season? He said, well, my wife and I spend a month every quarter serving in Africa. And I remember driving away from there thinking, I'm never going to Africa, but I hope as long as the Kings are good.
That's cool.
No, and as long as the Kings are good, I hope you keep doing it.
Yeah.
So
I get to watch basketball.
That's right.
In Africa.
That's right. But so all these things happen, and then I end up in Africa, and it puts me on a path to profoundly change my life. And that's truly what opened the doors to generosity. And one of the things that, when I was with Lauren, one of the things that was really interesting to me is how vulnerability can be a way to, it was a disruption. And so they asked us, they gave us, an hour's notice or something like that they wanted us to talk about the impact that we had seen God was having in our lives. And so Lauren's like, "Dad, I don't have anything." I'm like, "Okay." And so I'm like, "Well, what about this? Or what about this? Or what about?" And she's like, No. I'm too young. God's not doing anything in my life or whatever. And so she goes, "Actually, I'm not doing this." And so, boom, going into the staff meeting, 150 people, and, we're going to be called up. She's like, "I'm not doing it." I'm like, "Okay." So I'm just kind of praying for her. Her leg's shaking, the whole row's shaking because she's shaking her leg. And boom, they call on Lauren, and she goes up, and she's suddenly poised, and she's like, "I'm Chief Todd's daughter." And they call me Chief Todd over there. And so they all laugh, and boom, she's like, I didn't think that God was doing anything in my life. I had experimented with weed, and I had decided I didn't want to do it anymore. My friends had decided we didn't want to do it anymore. And so I prayed about it. And I actually stopped. And my friends have not stopped. And sitting here trying to figure out what has God done in my life, I realized that is an area where God helped me. And so it was very well received. And then Dr. Chris is the founder of Faith Alive, and Dr. Chris also teaches at the university. He teaches medical students in the university. And over there, if you're a medical student from your first day of college through the end of medical school, so it's like 7 years or something, you're a medical student. So he was teaching first and second year medical students, and Dr. Chris came up to me and he said, Todd, can we have Lauren come to the school tomorrow and basically do what she just did, share her story? And I'm like, if Lauren's open to that, fine with me. And Lauren's like, yeah, sure, Dad, I'll do that. And it was one of the coolest moments ever for me to watch my daughter be up there, and she shared her story and then took questions for almost an hour from kids. And what was so interesting is while we live such radically different lives in that the conditions that they live in and lack of running water in many places, open sewers, all these kind of things, although our day-to-day lives per se are vastly different, what they realized, it was really interesting to watch the Nigerian students see from Lauren that the peer pressures that Lauren felt, they feel too. And that an American would have those same kind of pressures. It was just a really interesting thing. And it was because she was vulnerable and shared her heart, she made it safe for other people to look at some of their things, and really ended up being a profound conversation. And it was one of those things that months later, Dr. Chris would email me and like, Lauren's talk, it continues to have just a rich impact on students here.
Yeah. Throwback to ripple effects.
Yeah. True. Fair enough.
I mean, that's a great example of breaking free from comfort, especially because like that was an example. She had to public speak last second. A lot of studies showed that people fear public speaking more than death itself. So
in the moment, I would say that was true.
But that's her, stepping out twice. Had no clue going on this mission trip, had no clue that she would be asked. This was not what she was expected. It was a disruption in many ways. Right. I wasn't planning on this. And then stepped out of her comfort zone and was used by God in that. Why do you think comfort can be such an enemy, if you will, against being generous or living a generous life?
I think it's just the fear of the unknown. And it's like, what do I have to offer? Or it's different than what I know. And so can it be good? And again, I think so often we go into things with a tunnel vision as to what that might be. It didn't occur. So Lauren's getting up to say what's going on. It didn't occur to me that Lauren would ultimately make it safe for Nigerian students to look at their own life and realize that peer pressure is something we all deal with, and there are opportunities to work through it. And I think it cuts a lot of different ways. I had another girl that went to Nigeria with me, and we did a carnival. We were going into a remote village, and that was really, where Faith Alive is, the poverty's bad, but if you go out 15 or 20 minutes or whatever into a more remote village, then the poverty is just staggering. And, kids are wearing tethered clothes and, et cetera. So they were going out, the Nigerians from Faith Alive, they were doing AIDS testing in this village for the adults, just to understand. And then anyone that had tested positive, put them on a treatment program. And so I'm like, okay, great. We'll do a carnival. And there were 6 of us or 7 of us. And we had taken over one year we had like 20 of us that went. So we took a carnival where we could pop it up in about 15 minutes, these great facades and the pennant flag streamers that you see like a gas station or something like that. You know what a gas station is, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
That much I do know.
Okay, good.
Still Googling station wagon?
Yeah,
okay.
Station wagon, that's the one. Anyway, and so it was colorful, and then we had games. So it created kind of area in front, area in back to run the game. And we had 4 games. There were 6 or 7 of us on the trip. And so we're running this game. I worked with Claudia. I can use her name because she knows I tell the story. I was with Claudia. We were in the Go Fish booth. And so when she would help the kid get the fishing pole over the curtain, she would tell me if it was, a prize for a girl or a boy, and then I would attach it and pull it back or whatever. Great day, super fun. We provided a snack. There were 200 plus kids, and in a couple of hours, every one of the kids went through all the booths, and they got their snack, and boom, it was great. And actually, Claudia met a kid, befriended a kid, and she wanted to give the kid her jacket. I said, yeah, you can do that. I just asked her to do it more privately because I didn't want to create like everyone.
Let me get your shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so anyway, and then 10 minutes later, we're breaking down the carnival, and one of the Nigerians comes and is like, Todd, Claudia's crying behind the bus. And I go back there. I'm like, Claudia, what's up? Did something go wrong with the jacket? She goes, no, it was great. She goes, this is stupid though. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? We just made these kids' life worse. The white people come and we bring this stuff and we're never coming back. And now we've teased them, and yeah, we gave them a great day and whatever, but we've made it worse because now they know what they're missing out on and
wow,
all that.
That's deep. That's like a commentary on all missions too. Like right. A lot of people just feel like, what is this actually doing?
That's right.
We went and had fun for a week, but okay, continue.
And so I was like, okay, yes, Claudia, I can totally see it that way, 100%. And I said, or maybe we can look at it a different way. Maybe God's using this to try to break your heart for what breaks his, and that you will go on because of this experience and lead a different life or choose to help be part of the solution or whatever. And so that was super interesting. And Claudia wasn't a Christian. She was with her brother. Her brother had lived with me. And so I said, well, you should talk to Zach about your faith. At the end of that trip, the same thing. They're like, we want you to talk about what God's done in your life or what you've experienced here. And Claudia was mortified. She was mortified about speaking in public. She was like, I don't really have anything to share. My only thing was a negative thing with the carnival. And I'm like, share it. Share it. I will stand right next to you. I will rub your back.
Wow.
We worked on the words. I said, if you can't remember in the moment because of stress or whatever, then I'll feed you the words and just, do it. So Claudia gets up and does it and talks about the carnival and that the poverty broke her heart, and she was trying to figure out what to do with it, but she felt that she was going to let that motivate her in her life.
Wow.
And so anyway, it was super cool. And then she's crying and it was super stressful. And I'm like, are you ready to become a Christian? She goes, yes. So wow. I said, do you want Dr. Chris to do it at the end of this? And she's like, yes. And so then I went and talked to Zach and make sure he was okay. He's like, yeah, that'd be great. And then I went and asked Dr. Chris. He's like, yeah, great. So then I went, and I was the very last one from our team, said, well, the highlight for me was the carnival and seeing that, but that was the highlight. But the real highlight is that Claudia is ready to become a Christian, and Dr. Chris is going to come forward and pray for her or whatever. And so that was incredible. Claudia's gone on to become a nurse. She still does mission work, and it's radically changed her life and what she's doing with her life and how she's coming alongside people. Yeah. And it all happened from a thing that totally disrupted, but came out of an act of generosity too.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it disrupted her emotions. It disrupted her spiritual life or lack of what. She literally becomes a Christian through this,
right.
Taking a step out. One thing I think why it's hard to be generous, where it feels like a disruption, is because we get so used to the ordinary. So that is sort of like a special case in that it's going on a mission trip,
right?
Which hopefully that could be a part of our life as missions. But let's just say in the day-to-day, when I just feel like my life is really ordinary, right. And almost like boring. I do the same things every day.
Right.
And I think a part of that too is like sometimes we're so comfortable here in the West,
Yes.
where it's like my comfort, I can control my schedule, I can control my time, I control. So speak to that person or maybe your specific individual routine. How can we be open to disruptions in the day to day?
I think in the day to day, again, it's listening to the nudges and having a mindset and a lens. Put on that lens that all day, every day, whoever crosses your path is a potential opportunity. And again, we talk about allowing ourselves to be interrupted. And I think also, Dax, an aspect of it is allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. And I was sharing, I was a speaker at a youth program, and I was talking about opportunity. And basically one of my theories is and I think this gets actually to your question too, is in our circumstances, so often we can have a knee-jerk response and we're a victim. Why is this happening? Ding, 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 ding. I don't understand it. Ding, 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 all these things. And my view is if, Romans 8:28 says, in all things, God works for the good of who love them. When Chad, the heroin addict, died, Dr. Chris from Nigeria had been in my house with Chad, so he knew Chad a little bit. And so when I emailed him that Chad had passed, he sent me Romans 8:28, in all things, parens, not some, God works for the good of those who love him. And that was that had a radical change and impact on me. And so I was doing a presentation to a bunch of kids and about this. They were Thrive kids. And I challenge them that too often we respond with as a victim. And if we believe that God can work in all things, not some, then you tell me what's going on and I'll help you find the opportunity. So one of the kids that stood up was one of the leaders. He was one of the D group leaders. And he stood up and he said, well, my issue is I'm not feeling close to God. And okay, so now you're in a setting where all these kids are believers and this guy's being honest and vulnerable. Yeah. I'm not close to God. And I'm like, okay.
And he's a leader, stepping up in front of the students.
That's right.
Being vulnerable.
Yes, yes. He was the leader. And so I was like, okay, so tell me about a time when you did feel the presence of God. And so he starts to tell me about that. And I said, okay, so why am I asking you that? And he said, well, I think you want me to remember that God has been faithful in other aspects of my life, et cetera. And I said, absolutely. And I said, honestly, we should all have a journal of this because it's very easy in the moment, in the stress, in the tension, in the whatever, to forget all those other times where we may have felt God come alongside us. So for example, with Thrive Kids, if I'm having a frustrating day with a Thrive Kid that's living in my house or whatever, if I go back and remember that drive to church, when I heard, Todd, you need to open your house to Thrive Leadership students, and then the pastor coming out and saying, we need help. We need people to open their house for Thrive students, especially guys. Then I knew that I was being asked to do it. And if I'm being asked to do it, then there's an opportunity for me in it too, even when it may be a struggle. So this kid goes on and I'm like, okay, so how are you feeling? He goes, well, I feel better. And I still don't necessarily feel the way I used to, but I have confidence that I will and whatever. And I said, well, I see that and that's great. And I also see this was a really cool moment for everyone here because you're a leader in this group and you got up and you were vulnerable and you shared. And how many of us have felt a dry spell and we're not sure what's happening with our faith and et cetera. And now you've made it safe by your vulnerability for all of us to look at opportunities in our own life. And you've also helped people see how we can get through those by reminding ourselves where we've seen God at work in our lives. Yeah. And so I ended up, because he was vulnerable and disruption, actually God used it for good and a great learning experience for all of us. And again, there's another thing of a ripple because his vulnerability generated a ripple. Lauren's vulnerability generated a ripple. Yep. Claudia being honest about what she was feeling created a completely different ripple.
No, that's good. I mean, that literally just tied it all together. There's this theme of vulnerability. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why generosity is a disruption, why it gets you out of your comfort zone, because it's vulnerability. And I just Googled real quick here. Vulnerability is literally opening yourself up to emotional or physical harm. And so even that leader standing up in front of students saying, hey, I actually don't feel close to God, that opened him up to some emotional harm,
Right.
even maybe some students losing respect for him. Oh, that guy's a leader. What is he? He doesn't feel
Right.
close to God. What?
Right.
He actually opened himself up to that. And so, yeah, generosity is inherently a very vulnerable thing. And so we're afraid of vulnerability. Therefore, we're afraid to be generous.
Honestly, if you're afraid of vulnerability, but you want to be generous, just write a check. Although, but even that, there's vulnerability. Am I going to have money to pay my
Yes,
bills?
it leaves you,
if I do this other. If you're actually giving out of not giving out of abundance, but giving otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that goes back to, we've talked a few times about, the widow offering, because I mean, widows, that's why this story is so shocking. Widows are inherently vulnerable, especially in that culture and society. They were sort of outcast. And so the fact that this vulnerable woman doesn't have a man, doesn't have that source of income, she's giving out of her poverty. That's just what's so amazing about it. But Romans 8:28, in all things, not some.
Right.
So yeah, that's amazing.
And I think what we're trying to do with generosity, what I try to do with mentoring, et cetera, is take the blinders off. And the blinders are all those voices in our head that say, this isn't going to work. You can't do this. What about that? And the reality is, if we take the blinders off and are open that our call is obedience, we're looking for opportunities. You know, it's a lifestyle of looking for opportunities. And you know, I've called them before God opportunities. And it's just, what does God have out there for me? And approaching life with a mindset that no matter what gets dropped in my lap can feel like a huge disruption. It can feel like when I was a freshman, I grew up in Indiana, and their 7th, 8th, 9th grade was junior high. And my family moved to California my sophomore year. And that was a huge disruption in my life. And actually, the first year was horrible. I ate lunch by myself every day. Clearly, I'm a people person, so that was not a good thing. And I remember thinking that, I'd lived most of my life on the upper side of the coin. That's just, I had a good life and, whatever. And now I felt like I was on the bottom side of the coin. And this is before I became a Christian, but I had this thought that I'm on the bottom side of the coin right now. And I don't ever want to forget. I know at some point I'm going to be on the upper side of the coin again, but I don't ever want to forget what it was like to be on the bottom side of the coin. And I think that actually was God using an opportunity before I wasn't a Christian, but to grow me, to help me have empathy and help me be open to generosity, and to help me see that generosity can be a lot of different things. And often I think it's as simple as noticing somebody and just saying hi, or drop yourself for a second in their shoes. I don't know. All these people that have all these issues that frustrate us, we don't know what they've been through. And let's extend grace. Let's assume the best and see what that can do. And it's, so I've taken going to Nigeria, doing all these things, took the blinders off my life. Asking people to give me money, asking people to actually pray for me, took the blinders off my life and opened me up to something. Honestly, and I called it pride, but maybe, Dax, it was more fear. I didn't want people to think that I needed their money to go to Nigeria.
Yeah, because it was vulnerable. Oh, what if people think this? What if people gossip about me? Why is Todd asking for money?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Or the same thing, a prayer. Well, I don't want people to think I need the crutch of prayer. Now I'm all about prayer. And coming alongside people and inviting people into where I need prayer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And one thing I think sometimes the opportunity to be generous is a disruption, gets us out of our comfort zone. Other times, I would say we don't even get a choice. God allows us to be disrupted. Our circumstances become disrupted. Our relationships are disrupted. And then we have the opportunity to give out of that disruption. Do you have any examples of that?
Well, I think yes. And I think the best example of that, quite frankly, is me getting divorced. I did not have a choice in that. And so, but I would say we wouldn't be here today, Dax. I wouldn't have opened my home to 40 Thrive students. I wouldn't have, I'm not sure I would have done the mission work that I've done. And so while I may not have chosen the things that I've been through, I do like how God grew me through them. And honestly, the first night that Angie and I went out on a date, and Angie was a widow, and we didn't talk about really my divorce or her losing her spouse. But what we did talk about is our faith through those circumstances. And she said, I wouldn't have chosen what I've been through, but I do like how God's grown me through it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't really know her, but I know her. And she doesn't really know me, but she knows me because I felt the same thing. And so, again, I wouldn't choose these things, and they're very difficult when you're going through them. But if you're chasing your faith through them, then what I found is that God can use that. Then the promise of Romans 8:28, then in all things with Dr. Chris's parens, not some, that it can work out for good. Not things necessarily that we would have chosen, but dude, I love the life I get to live today. I love all the people I've got to meet because it's funny. At my 65th birthday, I had a big birthday party, and she's like, who do you want to invite? I'm like, well, I want our friends, but I want all these kids that, have come into my life too. So there are like 90 people there. And one of the kids comes and said, Todd, I forgot you have friends your own age. They're here. And it was about a third of the people at the party were our friends, and the rest were people like you and your age. And what was really cool about that for me, it was highlighting for my friends, my older friends or my age, my peers, whatever. But it was highlighting for them that they had watched me go through a divorce. They had watched some of these other things in my life. And now I was having the opportunity to let them see the fruit of trying to do things that got foisted on us. And again, no judgment to my ex-wife, none of that. It's just really, sometimes things happen that we don't have control over. Yeah. And there is an opportunity if we're open to that. And I have a very, very, very rich life today that would be different. I mean, it forced me to reevaluate what I do with my time, what I do with my heart, what I do with my resources, and, how I share my talents too.
Yeah.
And would some of this happen but for that? Maybe. But honestly, I was more chasing the world's definition of success, and going through those circumstances caused me to let go of the world's definition of success and really focus more on things that could have eternal consequences. And that is an inherent aspect of generosity, which is something completely not expected. And, my life was disrupted. And honestly, today, I think God was trying to get my attention. Well, it worked, and he got my attention, and now I'm passionate. That's one of the reasons I mentor so many kids. I'm passionate about, if you're 20 or 22, figure out now before God has to take all these things out of your life to get your attention, because God will get your attention.
Absolutely.
And so, anyway.
Yeah. No. So generosity, it's sometimes it's a disruption. It's uncomfortable. Mainly, I love this theme that popped up, that it's incredibly vulnerable. It is to step out and be generous. But we don't have to fear, because God uses all things for our good, for his glory. We can trust in that.
Right.
Testimony after testimony after testimony, looking back. You have no regrets about giving to this, trying to be generous here, doing that,
my gosh,
even if the outcome wasn't what you expected.
No. And honestly, what's super interesting is what was the impetus to Simply People? So about 7 or 8 years ago, I switched jobs. When I started my own business. I'd worked for a company for about 20 years, and they did a riff. And so boom, but I, had a very easy transition, and I created my own company, and I do some consulting work for some things. And anyway, as soon as I started that, God gave me a number that I was supposed to give away. And I've tithed and things like that. Tithe is give money to the church, etc. And so I had done that, and God gave me this number, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of a crazy number. But I was like, okay, I will honor that, and I will try to give that much money away. And so by the end of the year, I had gotten that number, and Honestly, I felt good for 2 weeks. Because in the middle of January, God's like, okay, you need to give 2/3 more next year. And I was just like,
Wow.
that's insane.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay. So I, started doing it and all these things. And about, late December, I'm checking to see where I was, and I was $10,000 short. I'm like, but look at all this money I've given away. And, but then God's like, I hear the whisper, so you're going to jet me over 10,000. I'm like, no, you can have it. So I gave the 10,000. The next year it was double it. The next year, within 2 more years, it was triple it. Wow. And so they were getting ready to start a nonprofit, and I just felt this, urge to do that. And a couple of guys that I knew from church, they were on my heart. They were interested, and I'm like, and then Andrew was like, well, what about this one person? And I'm like, yeah, but how would I ever pay for that? Because I know what these guys make and, whatever. And then I have this epiphany, and it was just like, God's like, dude, we've been planning for this. You gave all this money that you've been giving away. Now you can use that money to hire these 2 people to work on the nonprofit. And yes, it was again an increase,
Wow.
but in that time, God had been faithful, and my business had continued to do very well. And so it all worked out. But that was me saying yes, at first to a small number that grew, but that led to being able to do these things. So it's like, I didn't understand. At our church, the guy will say, our pastor will say, if you start tithing and 6 months from now, you can come back and tell me that this hasn't worked for you, I'll refund your money. And, like I said, one other episode, that when I was telling Angie what I do with my money, I was worried. And she's like, Todd, you can't outgive God. And that's just the reality, is you can't do that. So wherever you are in the generosity realm, whether it's with your time, your talent, your heart, or your resources, I believe that God's got our back. And just that when we're stepping out like that God will come in and replenish whatever it is that we're doing with our time or our talent or resources, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, that gets me excited for a journey of generosity. I love that God was calling you to give a certain amount. And then years late, he didn't start with that massive number. He
Right.
did start one step at a time, but
Right.
ultimately built up to where that big ask was almost natural to you. It's like, you know what? Okay. That gets me excited, because sometimes maybe people listening hear stories of someone giving some crazy amount of money or
Right.
doing some super generous thing.
It doesn't start
It's
like
one
that.
step at a time.
That's
Yeah.
right. It's exactly one step at a time. And I'm not saying that, so be generous to your heart. You don't have to open your home to 40 kids.
Yeah.
And have them live with you. You don't have to do that. But what I'm
I don't have a home, so thank you. That's
You're
great.
welcome.
I mean, you're going to give me yours. We talked about that.
Yeah, we
last
did talk
episode.
about
But,
that.
Yeah, it's
and
fine.
it's still not on my heart yet. But if it is, I will stand behind that.
You can't outgive God, Todd.
Okay, well, thank you. But as soon as God asked. But, and you made me forget what I was going to say. But, oh well. But generally is like, it's the small things.
Yeah.
And it is like with your time or whatever. And my whole thing is, if everyone, you want a practical thing, and a disruption or tension or some of these other things we've talked about, just start asking God, say, God, I want to live a generous life. Help me see what an opportunity may be. And I don't know what that will look like for you. And I don't, kids I mentor, I'm like, I don't want you to be Todd. I want you to be you. We all have a unique role in the body of Christ. So it's not about becoming that, but it is about learning from different people's experiences and not having to make the same mistakes that we made, and learn from that. And it's just about a simple act. I mean, one of the cornerstones of Simply People, it's just a simple act. We're not waiting for the billionaires. We believe that everyone has what they need already, where they are and with what they have. They have an ability to step into the generosity game. And the reason that that's so important, because it's so exhilarating, and it leads to such a rich and fulfilling life. And that's why it's important to allow a disruption, what might seem as a disruption or may not seem like it's being fair. If we're open to it and looking at that, put that lens on, that I think we can find something great and something rewarding.
Yeah. Amen. Well, Todd, thank you. First of all, thank you for being vulnerable during this episode. I appreciate it. I know everyone appreciates it. And I'm enjoying the journey of generosity. I'm feeling blessed. I feel like this is some great content, and we're having fun. So thank you for joining us in episode 5. We are officially halfway. 5 episodes left. And thank you guys for listening. Definitely follow Simply People. This podcast is brought to you by Simply People. And so you can read about Simply People down in the links below. Go follow them on social media. And Todd and I will see you in the next episode. So see you guys soon.